Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
When I accepted a job in Pennsylvania, the urgency to find a place to live was paramount. The job required my immediate presence, and the only available accommodation was within HOA. Despite my reservations about HOAs, I had little choice but to take the plunge. My new role involved night shifts, meaning my sleep schedule was inverted, and I needed peace during the day. The neighborhood was a picture of suburban tranquility, with its tree-lined streets and meticulously maintained lawns. The houses, nearly identical in their architecture, exuded a sense of order and uniformity. It was a community that seemed to pride itself on appearances, a fact that both intrigued and unsettled me. The homeowner who rented the apartment to me seemed friendly enough, handing over a thick booklet of HOA rules with a reassuring smile. The booklet outlined everything from trash disposal schedules to the acceptable shades of paint for front doors. It was overwhelming, but I was too focused on settling in to give it much thought. The apartment itself was modest but comfortable, situated on the ground floor of a 3-story building. It was functional, with just enough space to accommodate my belongings and provide a semblance of home. However, it also housed the building's main electric panel, a detail that would soon become the source of relentless frustration. Within days of moving in, the first intrusion occurred. I was jolted awake by the sound of keys jangling in the lock, followed by the doors swinging open. The property manager, a stout man with a brusque demeanor, entered without so much as a knock. He mumbled something about checking the electric panel and proceeded to the utility closet. I was too groggy to protest, but as he left, I reminded him of the need for a 24-hour notice. He nodded absently, already halfway out the door. These visits became a regular occurrence, disrupting my sleep and leaving me increasingly agitated. The property manager's disregard for the notice rule was blatant, and my polite requests for advance warning were met with indifference. Each time I brought it up, he dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand, as if I were being unreasonable. The situation escalated when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I wrote a note in bold letters, requesting 24-hour notice for any entry, and taped it to the door. It was a simple plea for respect and privacy, but the next day, I found the note crumpled on the floor. The message was clear: my request was not going to be honored. Frustration turned to anger, and I resolved to physically prevent any further unannounced entries. I began barricading the door with a heavy chair, a makeshift barrier that provided a sense of security, albeit a fragile one. The first time the property manager attempted to enter and found the door blocked, he pounded on it with a fury that echoed through the apartment. I refused to let him in, shouting through the door that I needed my sleep and would not tolerate further intrusions. This act of defiance did not sit well with the property manager, who wasted no time involving the HOA. The following week, I received a letter from the HOA board, a sternly worded document accusing me of obstructing essential maintenance and threatening fines for non-compliance. The fines were for trivial issues, such as failing to adhere to the precise positioning of trash bins on collection day and minor infractions like the length of time my blinds were left open. The fines were not just a financial burden. They were a tool of intimidation, a way to exert control and pressure me into submission. My rental agreement only covered the base rent, leaving the homeowner responsible for these fines. However, the mounting tension strained our relationship, and their initial warmth turned to frustration. They urged me to comply with the HOA's demands, fearing the financial repercussions. As the situation deteriorated, the constant harassment and lack of privacy became unbearable. My attempts to communicate with the HOA were met with bureaucratic stonewalling. The board meetings, which I attended in the hope of voicing my concerns, were exercises in futility. The board members, a group of individuals who seemed to relish their positions of authority, dismissed my grievances with a veneer of politeness that barely concealed their indifference. As the pressure mounted, I sought legal advice, hoping to find a way to enforce the notice rule and protect my rights as a tenant. The lawyer I consulted was sympathetic but explained that while the law was on my side, the cost and time involved in pursuing legal action might outweigh the benefits. It was a disheartening realization, but it also fueled my determination to stand my ground. The stress of the ongoing conflict seeped into every aspect of my life. My work suffered as exhaustion took its toll, and my social interactions dwindled as I became consumed by the battle with the HOA. I felt trapped in a cycle of intrusion and retaliation, with no clear path to resolution. The property manager's visits continued, each one a reminder of the power imbalance that defined my living situation. His presence was intrusive, his demeanor smug, as if he relished the disruption he caused. My barricade held firm, but it was a temporary solution, a small act of rebellion against an overwhelming force. In a bid to regain some semblance of control, I began documenting every interaction with the property manager and the HOA. I kept meticulous records of the unannounced entries, the fines, and the dismissive responses to my complaints. It was a small comfort, a way to assert my reality in the face of their denials. As the end of my lease approached, the inevitability of my departure loomed large. The homeowner made it clear that they would not renew the lease, citing the ongoing conflict and the financial strain of the fines. The decision was both a relief and a new source of anxiety. I faced the prospect of finding a new place to live, a daunting task given the urgency and my limited resources. The search for a new home was fraught with challenges. The rental market was competitive, and my night shift schedule made it difficult to attend viewings and meet potential landlords. Each rejection felt like a blow, compounding the stress and uncertainty of my situation. Meanwhile, the HOA continued their campaign of intimidation. The fines persisted, and the letters grew increasingly threatening, hinting at legal action if I failed to comply. The pressure was relentless, a constant reminder of the power they wielded over my life. In the final weeks before my departure, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The initial excitement of a new job and a fresh start had been overshadowed by the relentless challenges of living under an HOA's jurisdiction. The experience had been a harsh lesson in the realities of power dynamics and the erosion of personal boundaries. As I packed my belongings, the weight of the past months settled heavily on my shoulders. The apartment, once a refuge, had become a battleground, and I was eager to leave it behind. Yet, the uncertainty of what lay ahead was daunting, a reminder that the struggle was far from over. The day I left, the neighborhood was as serene as ever, its pristine facade belying the turmoil I had experienced within its bounds. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business, the sense that the HOA's reach extended far beyond my time there. The road ahead was uncertain, and the challenges of finding a new home and job loomed large. The experience had left its mark, a lingering reminder of the complexities of navigating life under the watchful eye of an HOA. Most states have a law that gives renters a reasonable expectation of privacy, even from the property owners. I'm in SC, and it's a minimum of 24-hour notice for them to ask for permission. Now, I can't keep them out forever, but I'm still within my rights to say no and give alternative times. You should consult an attorney, though, and follow through with any recommending legal action. That's the only way these whole HOAs and property owners learn anything. You could also let them come in one day while jerking it to the nastiest porn you can find. That usually works pretty good for establishing boundaries. Whenever I move into a new place, I make it a point to insist on getting a fresh set of keys. You never know who the previous tenants might have given copies to, and it's a matter of security. In Cook County, Chicago, where I used to live, it's actually the law that landlords must provide new keys to incoming tenants. However, I'm not sure if this applies to the county I'm currently in. The idea of having a new key is reassuring, as it could take weeks or even months for a new copy to reach the HOA. That delay could be quite inconvenient for them, but it ensures my peace of mind. And if there's a very long delay for them, wouldn't that be a shame? Most rental leases and HOA provisions typically don't prohibit you from installing a simple chain lock on the inside of your door. This small addition can provide a significant sense of security. A chain lock acts as a physical barrier, giving you control over who enters your home while you're inside. It's a straightforward yet effective way to prevent unauthorized access, ensuring that even if someone has a key, they can't simply walk in unannounced. Importantly, a chain lock doesn't impede emergency access when you're not home, so it maintains safety standards while enhancing your personal security. Knowing that you have this extra layer of protection can be incredibly reassuring, especially in situations where you might feel vulnerable. If someone were to break through my front door while I was home, it would undoubtedly be a serious situation. In such a scenario, the presence of a chain lock could buy crucial time to react, whether that means calling for help or preparing to defend oneself. The incident would likely make the news, highlighting the breach of security and the importance of taking personal measures to protect one's home. A chain lock, though simple, can be a vital component of home security, offering peace of mind and a tangible sense of safety. Living in a condo turned out to be a journey filled with unforeseen challenges that I could never have anticipated. When my fiancée and I first moved into our condo complex, we were drawn to its charm and the promise of a community that would take care of common areas and maintenance. Little did we know that the HOA, the very entity designed to ensure our living environment was well maintained, would become a source of stress and frustration. It all started on a seemingly ordinary Monday morning. I was sipping my coffee, enjoying the quiet of the early hours before the day began in earnest. My fiancée was already at her desk, preparing for a day of work from home. Her job requires absolute silence and confidentiality, as she deals with sensitive information during phone calls. Any disruption could jeopardize her position, and we both understood the gravity of that. The tranquility of the morning was shattered by an unexpected email from the HOA. The subject line read, "Urgent, emergency repair scheduled for Wednesday." My heart sank as I opened the email, already anticipating the complications it might bring. The message was terse and to the point. It stated that there was an air pressure leak in our building, and repairs were scheduled for Wednesday. The email emphasized the urgency of the situation, labeling it an emergency repair. I frowned, puzzled by the term air pressure leak. What did that even mean in the context of a condo building? Was it truly an emergency, or was this just another instance of the HOA overreacting? I had so many questions, but there was no time to dwell on them. My immediate concern was the impact this would have on my fiancé's work schedule. I approached her desk, trying to keep my voice calm despite the growing unease I felt. The soft hum of her computer filled the room, a familiar backdrop to our daily routine. "Hey," I began, hesitating slightly as I tried to find the right words. "We just got an email from the HOA." I paused, gauging her reaction before continuing. "They're saying there's some kind of emergency repair scheduled for Wednesday." My attempt at a neutral tone belied the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The word emergency seemed to hang in the air, heavy with implications. She looked up from her computer, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. Concern was etched on her face, her brow furrowing as she processed the information. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, momentarily frozen. "What kind of repair?" she asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. The question was simple, yet it carried the weight of uncertainty about how this unexpected development might disrupt our carefully balanced lives. "Something about an air pressure leak," I replied, shrugging slightly as if to downplay the seriousness of the situation. In truth, I felt a bit out of my depth. I don't really know what that means, but they say it's urgent. My mind raced with possibilities, trying to piece together what an air pressure leak could entail and why it required immediate attention. The lack of clarity only added to my frustration, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I stood there, I could sense the tension in the room rising, both of us keenly aware of the potential impact this repair could have on our week. Her expression shifted from concern to frustration. "Wednesday is one of my busiest days. I have back-to-back calls all day. Any noise could be a huge problem." I nodded, understanding the predicament. "I'll try to talk to them. Maybe we can reschedule for a day that works better for us." With that, I composed a polite but firm email to the HOA, explaining our situation. I requested that the repairs be postponed until the following Monday, when my fiancée could arrange to take a few days off work. I hoped they would understand and accommodate our request. The response came swiftly, and it was not what I had hoped for. The HOA's reply was curt and unyielding. They insisted that the repair was an emergency and could not be rescheduled. Their vendor was already booked, and the work needed to be completed as planned. They offered no explanation for why it was deemed an emergency, nor did they acknowledge the inconvenience it would cause us. I felt a surge of frustration. It seemed as though the HOA was more concerned with sticking to their schedule than considering the impact on residents. I wondered if they even understood the nature of the repair they were demanding. Was it truly an emergency, or was this just another example of bureaucratic inflexibility? As the day wore on, my frustration grew. I spent hours researching what an air pressure leak might entail, hoping to find some clarity. From what I could gather, it could be related to the building's HVAC system, or, more alarmingly, the sprinkler system. If it was the latter, I understood the urgency. malfunctioning sprinklers could pose a serious safety risk. But without clear communication from the HOA, I was left in the dark. I decided to reach out to a few neighbors to see if they had any additional information. Most of them were as clueless as I was, but one neighbor mentioned that they had heard rumors of issues with the building's water pressure. It was all speculation, though, and did little to ease my concerns. Meanwhile, my fiancée was trying to come up with a contingency plan. She considered working from a cafe or a friend's house, but the logistics were complicated. She needed a secure internet connection and a quiet space, neither of which were guaranteed outside our home. Taking time off work was another option, but it would mean losing income, something we couldn't afford to do lightly. The pressure was mounting, and I felt caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I didn't want to risk fines or other repercussions from the HOA by refusing entry. On the other hand, I couldn't allow my fiancé's job to be jeopardized by the noise and disruption of the repairs. As Wednesday approached, I found myself growing increasingly anxious. The lack of clear communication from the HOA was infuriating, and their refusal to accommodate our request felt like a personal affront. I wondered if there was any legal recourse available to us. Could we refuse entry without facing penalties? Did the HOA have the authority to enforce the repair schedule against our wishes? I spent hours combing through our condo's governing documents, trying to find any clause that might offer us some protection. The legal jargon was dense and difficult to navigate, but I was determined to find a solution. I also reached out to a local attorney for advice, hoping they could shed some light on our rights as homeowners. The attorney's response was sobering. They explained that while HOAs do have certain rights to access units for emergency repairs, the definition of an emergency can be subjective. If the repair was truly critical, the HOA might be within their rights to insist on immediate access. However, without more information about the nature of the leak, it was difficult to determine if the HOA's actions were justified. Feeling defeated, I shared the attorney's advice with my fiancée. We both knew that we were running out of options. The repair was scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, and we needed to make a decision. On Tuesday evening, we sat down together, trying to devise a plan. My fiancée decided to speak with her manager, explaining the situation and requesting the possibility of working from a different location for the day. Her manager was understanding but firm. She needed to ensure that all security protocols were followed, and working from an unsecured location was not an option. With no other viable alternatives, we reluctantly agreed to allow the repairs to proceed as scheduled. I emailed the HOA to confirm that we would provide access to our unit, despite our reservations. Wednesday morning arrived, and with it, a sense of dread. The repair crew showed up promptly at 9 a.m., armed with tools and equipment. I let them in, trying to remain cordial despite my frustration. My fiancée retreated to the bedroom, hoping to muffle the noise as much as possible. As the workers began cutting into the drywall, the sound was deafening. The constant drilling and hammering made it nearly impossible for my fiancée to concentrate, and I could see the stress etched on her face. She did her best to manage her calls, but the noise was relentless. Throughout the day, I hovered nearby, monitoring the progress of the repairs. I hoped that the workers would be efficient and minimize the disruption, but the hours dragged on. By midday, my fiancé's patience was wearing thin. She had already missed several important calls, and her anxiety was palpable. As the afternoon wore on, I began to feel a sense of helplessness. I had done everything I could to advocate for our needs, but it seemed as though our concerns had fallen on deaf ears. The HOA's rigid adherence to their schedule had left us with little choice but to endure the chaos. By the time the workers finally packed up and left, it was well into the evening. Our living room was a mess, with dust and debris scattered everywhere. My fiancée emerged from the bedroom, looking exhausted and defeated. She had managed to keep her job, but the day had taken a toll on both of us. In the aftermath of the repair, I couldn't shake the feeling of resentment toward the HOA. Their lack of communication and unwillingness to compromise had turned a manageable situation into a nightmare. I knew that we would need to address the issue with them, but I also understood that it would be an uphill battle. As we cleaned up the mess left behind, I reflected on the challenges of living in a community governed by an HOA. While their role is to maintain the property and ensure the safety of residents, their actions often seem disconnected from the realities of daily life. The experience had left us feeling vulnerable and powerless, a stark reminder of the complexities of shared living. In the days that followed, I drafted a letter to the HOA, outlining our experience and requesting a review of their emergency repair policies. I knew that it might not lead to immediate change, but it was important to voice our concerns and advocate for better communication in the future. Despite the frustration and disruption, I was grateful for my fiance's resilience and understanding. We had weathered the storm together, and I knew that we would continue to support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. As we settled back into our routine, I hoped that our experience would serve as a catalyst for change within the community, ensuring that future repairs would be handled with greater consideration for the residents they affected. Odds are, yes, they can enter with notice. Your CC&Rs will define the required notice for entry in most cases. Your state may have other requirements on top of those, but it most likely involves notification timeframe that is reasonable. The board should work with you to do the work at a time that is good for you, but that isn't always possible or required. If you refuse to allow them in, then they can probably charge you the cost of the next visit to your home in addition to other fines. This would also be spelled in your governing documents. You may be out of luck. Would it be possible to use annual leave for the time someone is in your home? Some managers are reasonable about this since you can't stop it and they want to protect their information. Your wife should approach this situation as if it were a genuine emergency, similar to a broken pipe or another urgent household issue. It's crucial for her workplace to have a contingency plan for such unexpected disruptions. Communicate the HOA's emergency repair notice to her employer, emphasizing the urgency and potential impact on her ability to work from home. This will help them understand the situation's gravity and possibly offer solutions like temporary remote work accommodations or rescheduling important tasks. Just as a broken pipe would require immediate attention and flexibility, this scenario demands a coordinated effort between your wife, her employer, and the HOA. Encourage open communication with both parties to find a workable solution that minimizes disruption while addressing the HOA's repair needs. By treating it as a serious issue, you can better navigate the challenges and reduce stress for everyone involved. You will most likely face fines and/or fees depending on how it is set up. If they have the vendor scheduled and they have to come another day, it will definitely cost more money and someone will have to pay for it. Depending on what the air leak is, could be HVAC pressure issues or low PSI for something that is critical in the function of the building. If they are resorting to opening the wall, it's major work. Could be low PSI air for a sprinkler system for a soffit or carport, dry system, which would definitely be an emergency repair, possibly involving the fire marshal being involved. I suspect if you don't allow them in, it will have negative consequences for you. From fines to rescheduling fees, as well as if you guys are the ones always throwing up roadblocks, they won't be as eager to help you in the future. Can your wife take the work into a bedroom and close the door?
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.